Stay ahead of the competition in the U.S. iGaming and sports betting market. Join our webinar for B2B Platform Providers navigating the U.S. iGaming and sports betting market. Gain insights into the current and future market trends from our expert panel. Rickard Vikström, Elena Kovakova, Jesper Scharbrink. Internet Vikings, your reliable hosting partner. Our webinar starts now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome to another Internet Vikings webinar, the first one for the year 2023, but definitely not the last one. For those who are joining us for the very first time, my name is Julia and I'll be your host for today. As always, before I introduce our speakers and experts and tell you the agenda of the webinar, I will allow another few minutes for people to gather up. And in the meantime, let's introduce ourselves. I can see from the chat that there's been quite a few people joining us nice and early, a few minutes before the webinar. Hello, guys, and welcome. Please continue introducing yourselves. Tell us where you're coming from, what country, where you're currently located. Somebody's having a problem with the sound, but then it says that it's good. Estonia, welcome. United States, UK, Spain, Malta, Mexico, Delaware, US, London, Poland, Malta. Wow. US, Sweden, Croatia, Sweden again. We're getting more and more countries every time, don't you think so, guys? How are you doing today? Jesper, Jelena, Rickard.
All good, thank you.
Oh, good. Jelena is normally joining us from New York, but today she is together with Rickard in Stockholm, Sweden. How is it there in Sweden?
Oh, it's beautiful. We are having the best time. We got fresh snow. Many people don't agree with me, don't share the excitement about the snow, but doing pretty well.
It's very hard for me to imagine in Malta because we nowadays have around 22, 23 degrees.
Yep.
It's sunny. Jesper, what about you?
No, I'm definitely where it's snowing, up in the mountains in Sweden, skiing actually, and doing some work. So I have plenty of snow and plenty of sunshine as well. It's the best combination ever. I agree with Elena. I agree a lot with Elena.
You are the first.
That's amazing. In the meantime, more people, New Zealand, Netherlands, Bulgaria, Ireland, Colombia. That's amazing. I think we gathered everybody from each continent. Even we have people joining from Africa today. So I guess it was enough time for those who will be running late. They can still join us. They will not miss any vital information. I will slowly start introducing the concept of the webinar and the agenda so that we don't lose any time. So we've been running the United States related webinars for nearly 2 years now. We decided to introduce slightly different concept this time. We were normally running general US market and compliance updates. However, the market has grown enormously and continues to grow. A lot is changing every year, every month, literally every day. So we decided it's worth having it segmented by different areas of industry. So today's webinar will be dedicated to B2B platform providers and aggregators. There is an increase of number in the presence of B2B platform providers in the United States, and I think they really deserve the attention to have a webinar of their own. We've in Internet Vikings been working extensively with platform providers and aggregators for the past in 2022, and we gather up a lot of good and valuable information for them. So maybe we should start with introducing the speakers. Maybe I'll let Jelena go first as the lady.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Hi, thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Elena. I don't know if you have joined us before on our 6th webinar, right, Julia? But I do US market at Internet Vikings, and my head is and my title is head of regulatory compliance.
Fantastic, Rickard.
Perfect. No, I'm so happy that Elena is here with me in Stockholm this time. And no, Rickard, one of the founders and the CEO of Internet Vikings, worked a lot with different states, different regulations, different new regulations, different new states the last 2 years. What to do, where, and how, and when. And really looking forward to sharing that information to everyone.
Fantastic. And finally, the last but definitely not the least, yes, Jesper.
No, thank you. Yes, Jesper, I have a long time in the gaming industry, CEO of Svenska Spel, CEO of Music Limited, and board member and chairman of a line of different iGaming related companies. And one of those, I'm proud to say, is Internet Vikings, going from klarhet to klarhet, as we say in Swedish, from star to star. And it's really fun to be here. I think this is the 5th or 6th seminar I'm doing together with Elena. And I normally sit in Stockholm, last time next to Rickard, but then Rickard said, Elena's coming, you have to get out of here. So I took my escape up to the mountains. No, it's a pleasure to have these seminars. There's so many interesting questions coming, and this is also a very, very hot topic for a lot of people. So it's fun to be here, and I just realized it's more than 100 people listening to this one again. So it's a good thing.
Definitely. Thank you very much for introducing yourselves, guys. So what will be happening today, normally we start with Jelena with compliance and regulatory changes, but today we're going to start with Jesper. He's going to tell us what is happening for B2B providers specifically in the US market, what is the current situation and where it will be developing. Then Jelena will take over with new state openings with some figures for the revenue and perhaps some regulatory and compliance updates. Rickard will continue the topic regarding the B2B platform providers, and then Jesper will wrap up with a strategic planning on how to enter the market, or if you're already there, on how to expand. As always, I have a gift for those who are staying with us for the very end. We have prepared nice extensive brochure for B2B platform providers specifically, so that you can find all the information regarding the regulations, licensing processes, all the vital information you need to know when operating in the US market. With this, I'm passing my mic to Jesper, and I will be coming back within 20-30 minutes with a Q&A session. Enjoy, guys.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And yes, I think we could swap to the next picture or slide. We are in this seminar focusing on platform providers and the role of platform providers in the US. And I will do a bit more of an overview, a strategic overview on this one. And it's quite interesting because as CEO of an operator, you've always been in a discussion whether you should have your own platform or not. And a lot of the companies, especially the larger ones, say that you really have to have your own platform. I'm not 100% sure. We had at Mr. Green, we had NYX as our main or basic platform, the PAM, so to speak. And then we built everything around it. And I mean, that worked perfectly well. For others, they really want to have their own platform. But I would say, looking at how the US is expanding right now, I think there's a need and there's a room for a lot of platform providers. And I mean, it's a bit back in the days in the gold rush, they said that it was probably more profitable to sell the shovels than digging for the gold. And it might be the same here. We don't know that yet. But as we know today, many of the platforms providers are doing really, really good business. And that's, of course, because they have good products. There are some really good platforms out there. And if I would start a casino today, entering the US market, there are so many things that you have to get in order. I would not spend my first money on building the platform. I would definitely go with the platform provider. then when my company becomes one of the big five and we need to stand out or do things that no one else can, yes, of course, then you might reconsider and invest. But on the other hand, today, building a mid layer on top of an already existing platform, we basically give you all these things. So I think there's and this is the same perhaps both for the B2B or for the iGaming and sportsbook platforms, as well as for the RGS. As a game developer today, I would actually, if I were a small studio today, I would start on an existing platform like Pariplay Ignite or Relax similar solution, rather than spending my first dollars and first money on building my RGS. But as a game provider, I would probably build my or develop my own RGS a bit faster than I would as an operator talking about the platform, because as a game provider, eventually you need to control the entire code of your games and what the game can do, and they are so integrated with RGS. So over time, I think that will come, and that's also the reason why there are so many companies out there today providing platforms. So this is an interesting market, and what we will talk about now is, of course, how as a platform provider, what to think about when you enter this market, what to consider, from everything from getting a license, but also what markets and what's the market growth, etc. Another thought you get when you see these numbers of platform providers is, of course, that this is expected to be a huge market, and you want to be there early. Every one of these has get their licenses or are getting more and more licenses because they see and know where all the customers are. And there's also a discussion whether the US market will be an oligopoly or if it will be a market with a lot of competition like Europe. Europe has like 300-400 operators or perhaps more, and worldwide we're talking about thousands and thousands of brands, all on different platforms. And what we've seen in Europe is that this is a huge market for the platform providers. Will it be the same in the US, or will the US be run by the big five? Well, that's to be discussed. There are different opinions. I could argue for the later, that this will be a race to the bottom where the big five will win. But I could also argue the other way around, because and especially if we put in the tribe aspect of it, if the tribes are getting online licenses, there are going to be so many competitors out there. There are going to be so many tribes entering this market. So that in itself for a platform provider is of course a lucrative market. But also, as the market looks right now, I think there are room for smaller operators with a different offer, with a different attitude, with a different brand, and going state by state rather than taking all the states at the same time. Because we should remember, I mean, some of these states are, I mean, Illinois is basically the same GGR as Sweden, so and Sweden is a very lucrative market to be in, and so you don't have to see US as an operator. You don't have to see the continent. You could see state by state, like I would do in Europe. I don't see Europe as a continent to conquer. I see them country by country, and then you enter. I mean, I don't think there's perhaps one or two, but most of the operators today are in a handful or two handful of European markets rather than the 32, 36, whatever it is. And I think we will see the same in the US, except for some. Some will be in every state you can find, the big ones. And yeah. So once again, you can debate this back and forth the full day if you want to. And the answer will be somewhere in between, I propose. I think definitely the big five will take a huge chunk of the market, but there will also be room for more agile, cooler, if I might say that, or more branded experiences where you niche yourself a bit more, both on the iGaming side and on the sports betting side.
But with that said, you have to add, someone could argue the exact same thing about the UK market 8 years ago. And that has shifted now when the UKGC have done a lot of changes in how they read a policy, how they manage like what they think is a good way to handle player protection. And that has shifted a lot in the UK market, and that will happen in the US. People,
I mean, you're right.
Will push, and
You're absolutely right.
maybe not tomorrow, but maybe within the next 5 years.
Yes, regulation is perhaps the biggest impact on whether it will be an oligopoly or not. Because if they regulate too hard, the small companies will have difficulty catching up or keeping up. And we see that in the UK now. There's a lot of smaller operators are actually leaving UK, and some of them are going grey, and some of them are going into other regulated markets only, etc., etc. And the problem with this is, of course, that some people will follow into the grayer markets because they have been with the biggest one. They are not finding their offers attractive enough, etc., etc., which means that the canalization will go down. That's another discussion and another topic. But you are right, Rickard. Depending on regulation, the market will develop differently in numbers of companies being there.
Yeah, my point was more that I think some of the larger players will have problems in a few specific states within the next couple of years due to regulatory changes, and could be bugs, could be issues, could be anything within the platform that, or in the like how they treat players. But then comes back to the regulator in that specific state doing, like, not approving that specific operator. Like we had.
I mean, it could be, but I would say, yeah, that's more on the platform side. Because one should remember, when you build a platform, it has to be compliant. Yeah. It has to be compliant everywhere. It has to be compliant in every goddamn country or state you are in. And of course, that's an advantage being on a supplied platform, because they have that as their job. They have to follow up, and they are in all these states, and they have departments of doing this, and they can spread that cost over so many customers, while me as one operator have to bear this cost by myself, and that can be expensive. I think the biggest one, the big five, will survive this. They will be big enough to handle this. They will have big compliance departments, definitely. But the mid-sized, I think that those are the ones you are referring to. Yes, they might have problem, definitely. Yeah. Good. I think that's some philosophical discussion about the role of the B2B platforms. And to summarize, I think there's definitely a room for all these platform providers we have there. Is there competition? Of course, there's competition. But at the same time, I also think it will be US from a platform provider perspective will be a very lucrative market. And especially if you manage to do the first couple of states and learn how to do the compliance, then I think it's I mean, the market will grow. So I would definitely be there as a B2B provider. Yeah. And then, Elena, couldn't you walk us a bit through the market as it looks right now? How many states are open for sportsbook? How many states are open for iGaming? And most importantly, what's the trend? When we see that iGaming drags compared to Europe, where iGaming basically have been leading the gaming growth and the gaming development, it's the other way around in the US. So what's your view today?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive right into it. If we could see the slides, let's start with an overview. This is where we are in terms of today. As Jesper said, that US market should not be, again, considered as an independent market, and that's largely due to the Wire Act that was passed in 1961, way before the internet, but it was done to prevent the organized crime, even though now it serves us with as a form of regulation on legitimate gambling companies and state policies. There was an opinion in 2021 that Wire Act only applies to sports betting, and that's what our slides reflect. But however, as long as the Wire Act still stays in place, it is likely to serve as a legal precedent for keeping gambling on an intrastate activity, and even if the law applies only to sports betting. So far, if we are looking at sports betting, we have 26 states plus Washington, D.C., a lot of markets. If you are considered on a state-by-state basis, there has been a huge trend of more and more states joining this cohort. In 2022, we had 3 states added, like Massachusetts, Kansas, and Maine. Unfortunately, we did not see any new states being added to iGaming cohort, neither to online casino nor to online poker. Even though, again, we say that Wire Act does not apply, but it's still very much individual markets for individual state, and geofencing is very much in place for online casino and online poker. If we skip to the next slide and look at the outlook for 2023, we have had a pretty strong start of the year, as we always do. So far, 8 states have started the regulatory process on passing the online sports betting laws in those specific states. We will see how many states are going to end up at the finish line at the end of the year. It's hard to tell right now because the deadline has not passed to in a lot of states to introduce these bills, but it's unlikely that there will be more than what we see so far. There has been more states than is pictured here, like Hawaii tried to pass something, but it very quickly died. And if you can see, every single state is on their own timeline when it comes to approvals, or maybe not approvals for 2023. Like for sure, Missouri and Georgia are not going to happen in 2023 because it died in commissions. However, for instance, Vermont is going strong. So as of right now, this is where we are, but we will definitely see some shifts, and hopefully at least a few of these states are gonna pass the online sports betting laws. If we move on to the next slide, and if we start talking about online casinos, everybody is excited about online casino. You have seen that very tiny cohort of only 6 states that allow that compared to 26. And we got very excited this year. There were 4 states that have started the movement on online gaming compared to last year, for instance, when there was no movement at all. Unfortunately, right now, for various reasons, Illinois, Indiana, and New York are very unlikely to pass any laws, just where they are in their process. There is a hope for New Hampshire. If any state were to pass out of these 4 online gambling laws, it would be New Hampshire. However, a lot of experts are saying that online casinos can still be very much a pipe dream for U.S. market, at least this year. And there is a lot of conversation around it. Like us as a supplier, and in this space, we're trying to understand why. And apparently, sports betting, just because sports betting is more understood to other people. Like a lot of people in America have their own sports team. They're watching all the games. They are religious about them. So sports betting is definitely easier to sell as a law to pass. However, online casino is again getting more and more traction. I feel like online casino can still be at least a couple years away. It's not a question of if, it's more of a question of when, and we're probably looking at another 2 years. And the truth to that is, again, for many reasons, it being somewhat foreign concept to a lot of people. But again, there has been a lot of education to the population. How they say that if it's not, the gambling is happening, whether you want it or not. You know, you might not pass the laws, but people are still going to go and bet on the gray markets, which have no legal protection for you as a player. And that's, you know, and that's very risky. But also, and not from another point of view, you know, what we have seen, again, this gold rush in the US restarted again in a significant way after the big pandemic, you know, when the states were thirsty for additional revenue into their budgets. But what we have seen so far is that there has been a lot of like federal aid that goes to those individual states, and in a lot of states those funds have not been spent yet. So the timeline for that, we will see. The timeline for that is a couple years. So hopefully we will see more states are to come. That's for sure.
Yeah, Elena, I mean, thanks for that. I'm a bit surprised that the canalization argument hasn't been used more, because as far as I understand, there's a huge gray market in the US, and which means that the people in Kansas are playing, and or some of them are, and they are now playing gray market instead of in a controlled environment. So will this kind of argument increase, or is this something that will come up more and more? Because that has been the most prominent argument in Europe to why you should regulate, to canalize from gray and black markets into white market, where you can control it, you can measure it, and you can tax it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have seen this argument in US. There are a lot of arguments. One of them being is that, again, responsible gaming programs are not strong enough, and, you know, they don't protect the people as much. But again, it all comes down a lot to educating the regulator and educating the population that this is actually, it's not no gaming and then legal gaming. It's gray market versus white market, where you actually have protections, and it takes a lot of steps for you to get registered. You just don't stumble, you know, upon a gaming market. You have to complete a lot of steps and comply with a lot of geo requirements. So hopefully that will come to fruition in the next few years, for sure.
Is it more likely that a state with a sportsbook license also open up for an iGaming license?
I mean, that's what we are seeing so far. You know, we have no point of reference for the last year, but as just you've seen on the slide, that, you know, it's Illinois, Indiana, New Hampshire, and New York. All of those states already have a sports betting. So to a lot of them, sports betting is just the first step.
Yes.
So hopefully that cohort is going to grow.
And from a licensing perspective, is that an add-on license, as in some other markets, or is that a completely new license?
Well, we have seen, again, in the states where iGaming is already legal, sometimes it can be one license, sometimes it can be two licenses. Like, for instance, Michigan, we had to apply for sports betting and iGaming vendor registration. But when it comes to New Jersey and Pennsylvania, that's one license.
That's one license, yeah. Good to know. Perfect.
Let's look at some data, for more data from last year or in this year. In 2023, even though there is not much concrete update for the new states that are going to be opening up, there have been quite some movement for the states that have already passed. So far, as of today, in 2023, we had 2 launches. That was Ohio on January 1st and Massachusetts just 2 weeks ago on March 10th. Maine also passed the law, and it's upcoming. We do not know for sure just yet if it's going to be in 2023 or early 2024. So we have to stay updated as regulator progresses with defining and finalizing the requirements. But if you look at the handles, we pulled up the statistics here for the January, the amount of money that were bet for the whole month in every state, and you can see the top 10. I put in bold Ohio and Maryland here because I think that they are a big surprise, because Ohio, as you see, Ohio just went live this year on January 1st, like 3 months ago, and it's already on the second spot after New York, in terms of how much people bet, on the first starting month. I think that's significant considering that, Ohio is significantly less than New York in population. Ohio is almost 12 million and New York is 20. I feel like those are really good statistics that us as, iGaming companies like to see. And Ohio is very close to Michigan and West Virginia. So, like the states that already have gaming laws. So that makes it even more interesting. It's not like it's a state where nobody else can go bet. But it shows that there is a lot of interest for sports betting. And Maryland is just a tad smaller than Ohio, but it also launched at the end of last year, at the end of November. So it's been around at that time. It's a third month, and it's going really strong. In the same way, Michigan and Indiana, they are roughly the same in size compared to Maryland. 6.2 million population. So, they're roughly staying in the same numbers. But yeah, we'll see how Massachusetts goes. So far, there is no data. We are going to get it in roughly 2 weeks. So hopefully, Massachusetts will not disappoint as well.
No, but still, these are becoming big markets. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you can see that, top 5 is not surprising. Those are already established states, but Ohio, the newcomer, broke their way through there. So I think, we are at 26 states. There are so many more states. And yeah, as you were talking, that there is still a lot of potential for a lot of companies. Like when is the best time to enter the US market? The best time yesterday. The second best time is now. So, there is just so much opportunity for the iGaming market.
Cool.
Wonderful. Let's move on to the next slide. And yeah, here you see the total GGR, slot, table games, sports betting, and iGaming. January 2022 compared, everything keeps going up. If we look at it, and on a trend below, we can see the same situation for iGaming. It's an upward trend. There can be some lulls dependent on the month, but if you look at it from historical perspective, that there is definitely increased interest. And I think that's interesting, considering that US is going through a major inflation period, and there is a lot of talk about recession. And as we know, like again, iGaming is very recession proof. That gas prices does not change that as much, or the prices for anything else. But it is increasing year over year. That's for sure.
I mean, these are impressive growth numbers, also for the not only for the sports betting and iGaming, but also for the traditional land-based casinos. So there's some strength into the market right now, and of course that will make the companies even more keen on investing in growing this and going into new markets, etc. So I think we
and also the states to look at the iGaming track.
Yes.
Like, to go in. Yes. So it's not only like 6 states or 5 or 4, depending a little bit how you count on it. Really to go in towards the iGaming, because it is recession proof. It is revenue for the state, and
and there's a canalization of for players that are already playing elsewhere, I would say. What's interesting here is also that the iGaming piece of the pie looks a bit small, but we should remember that's 6 states compared to the 26 states for sportsbooks. So iGaming is it will become big. I mean, multiply that with times 4 and you would probably have the right number, or at least something around that. So it's quite impressive.
Yeah, and if you look here, there's literally 3 states. That's like the 90 something percent of the revenue for iGaming. The rest is just like so small due to different reasons. Either it's
most likely because the 3 states here are the one that has been doing this the longest.
Yes, or have a good regulatory framework, because there's some of them that, or maybe are a little bit
size.
Yeah, population size might be
of course
as well.
Yeah, this is interesting, really interesting.
Wonderful.
Good. So talking about some states now, I know we have a question here, and if someone could please post that question, because I think it's quite interesting. There's a lot of B2B providers and a lot of operators out there sitting and talking about, should we do all states? Should we do one state? And if we do one state, which one should we do? Are there states which goes faster or cheaper, etc., etc., etc.? And you have it here.
We just wanted to point out this question because everybody wants to know where to go first and what are the biggest states. So we get this question a lot. So we thought we would prepare a slide for it for you to show, again, based on our experience as iGaming and sports betting supplier, what states are the easiest to set up and are cost effective. I think it's an interesting graph. Again, operators might see it differently, but to us, Illinois, Indiana were relatively quick, and they had lesser of a cost. But New Jersey and Pennsylvania are up there, even though it takes longer and the licenses are more expensive. It is certainly the big whale. You want to start with one of the big ones, because it can make other states so much easier. Having New Jersey.
I agree with you. The interesting conclusion of this slide is not to start where it looks like you should start in Indiana or Illinois, but you should actually start in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, because if you can master those, then you can master all of them. And I know that is also another question. Should I go nationwide or should I go state by state? I would definitely start with one state. I mean, I've been in so many of these processes. I would start with one state, and then when I learned the ins and outs, and I made my mistakes and so forth, then I can go in multiple states later on. But I will not start in multiple states, because then you just multiply the errors you're gonna do. So for me, it looks like you should do Illinois, but I would do New Jersey.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about starting with one state, not just because the licensing process is roughly similar. You start with one state; it's roughly the same, give or take. There are minor differences, but New Jersey and Pennsylvania are going to take a lot of your time. And you can try to start with multiple states, but it's just going to be such a hefty burden in terms of getting that work done, that New Jersey and Pennsylvania are definitely deserve all of the attention.
I agree. Good. Rickard.
Yeah. Thank you.
Points for platform providers. What do you think about you're CEO of a platform provider. You've been in. We are in most, or basically in all these states, and done all the right things, but also made some mistakes and made some learnings on the way. So couldn't you just walk us through this?
Yeah. No, but absolutely. I wanted to bring this up in turn, for platform providers coming from the technical side. So this is not from a regulatory standpoint. It's what we have seen working with a lot of platform providers, helping them into the market, either if it's RGSs, if it's aggregators, if it's B2C PAM sportsbook providers. What I can say, if there's someone that, and I think there is here in the audience, what should we do going into the market? There's try to have a slim footprint. Like, what do you really need to have in a specific state? Do you really need to have the entire platform? And that comes to the second point, like how to consolidate different functions and different, like BI, data warehouse. Do you need to have that in a on a per state level? Maybe you have that kind of commercial need for it. Maybe you have there is a commercial decision to have it. But I would take that discussion before going into the market to put that into the budgeting process, because I've been in so many discussions where I will do this. I will start with X, Y, and Z, and then try to figure out, okay, what's the cost of driving this entire setup? But that's what I will be looking at going into the market. And then also coming to work efficiently with licenses. And maybe not only licenses, but also on the testing labs. You have GLI, you have BMM, you have a few other ones, but how to, like, what to do, what certifications to get. With New Jersey, you work directly with DG, and have that kind of understanding going into the market to get that kind of approval. Like, we have worked so long with our different like setups. We actually just yesterday got our cloud infrastructure license for Nevada. We applied 9 months ago. We got a provisional registration 6-7 months ago, and now we got the confirmation that we can do like in-state cloud in Nevada. And that's a process. We're doing that not only with one state, we're doing that with probably 10-15 states in parallel, just to understand the different regulations, different setups per state. And then, like, the last point I wanted to mention is disaster recovery. We have started seeing a lot of focus on disaster recovery to have both physical redundancy, but also redundancy within platforms, within the data centers, or and this is in-state disaster recovery. The reason for it, if we look at the slide, the market have grown with over 100% in 2 years, which means that 2 years ago, maybe there weren't the need for disaster recovery because there were a commercial interest or commercial need to have disaster recovery because the market in each and every state were too small. Today, when there is a major, like Ohio, like Massachusetts, like Maryland, there's a lot of money to be lost if you don't have a proper disaster recovery. So I would say focus on disaster recovery, have a plan for it. Maybe you don't need to set it up day one, but maybe day 365. But put that into the planning a little bit, because your customers, now we're talking with platform providers, your customers will want to have physical redundancy and disaster recovery, and that's what we do. Like, we were the first one or the only one that had the registration in Massachusetts on a hosting as a hosting provider on March 10th, which I'm super proud of, that we managed to get that as the only company. So great going into these markets. Thank you.
Perfect. Let's move on and then talk a bit about strategies to as a platform provider or a B2B provider when it comes to entering the US market. We talked about licenses. Licenses are key. You always start with a license. And just to repeat myself, I think we all would recommend that you start with one license, because there will be mistakes. It will take time. It's things to learn, and doing one first and get yourself a kind of a template. And also there, I mean, we're coming to the regulators around here. They are very professional, and they talk to each other. They have informal meetings and they have formal conferences, etc., etc. They're very and with that, very, very professional and very open, because they are not competing. They have their different regulatory framework, yes, and it will be like that. There will not be a federal framework for a long time, or if ever. And also, when you do the license, this is just a recommendation, which been speaking to so many people doing this. I think you should be very upfront. Rather, I mean, it's sometimes, do I really need to disclose this? And we have this issue here, and they will never find it out. I would say the other way around. They will find it out, and it's more, if you have an issue, explain it, and they will deal with it, rather than come. What regulators don't like is to be surprised after they're giving you a license and realize that, whoa, there were some holes in this one. They will hate that for good reasons. Then it's better to be upfront and disclose whatever, if you have any issues, or if you're a bit hesitant on should I answer this or not. My recommendation is to be very open. And once again, that goes down to the professionality. They know that, okay, you had this issue in this state, you handle it, good, then we know, and they go on. Finding the right people. This is more from a European perspective than from a US perspective, but it's so easy to be sitting here in Stockholm or Malta or London and think that you know everything about the world. We wouldn't be half where we are today without having Elena on ground in the US. It's so important for us, and that's perhaps basically, before you do the license, I would find the right people to spearhead your US entry and operations, and you need to have people on the ground. That's key, and we learned that lesson. And once again, we're super happy we're having Elena in the US, being there, speaking to people, and feeling the vibes and so forth. It's absolutely a must, I would say. Time to market, of course. Time to market is always key. But as Elena said, the best day to enter the US market was probably yesterday. The second best is today. But at the same time, do it thoroughly. Do it the right way. But time to market is important, of course. Technical, as Rickard talked about, technical scalability is key, because you are entering. If you plan to do more than one state, it's absolutely key that you can scale your technology, your systems, your platforms, your hosting, etc. You will always come in a situation where you need more than you thought, because different states have different regulations. But it's also if you want to grow your business, you have to be able to scale your tech. That's the first thing to do, because when it takes off in the US, it goes fast. Not everyone will succeed, that's for sure, but these who will succeed, and that's your ambition from the beginning, then you have to be prepared that you have to scale. You have to be prepared to have hosting partners that can just scale up with new service all the time, to handle the higher and higher player volumes, etc. So that is key. And then still remember, it's an early market. I think going in now, doing the right things, and companies can have a fantastic upside into this market just by being there and pushing through and having some endurance in this. Just stay there and stay focused. And yeah, so these are our 6 simple recommendations that we have from a more of a strategic level. So with that, I think we can conclude and Julia, run into questions.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you, Helena and Rickard as well. It was so informative. I nearly forgot to come back. I was just sitting and listening like that. It was all very interesting. So probably we're going to jump to the questions straight away. I'm going to start with the pre-submitted ones, and then we're going to return to the live questions. So are there any changes in approach to data backup policies expected or planned?
Elena, should you or I take that one? Not Rickard.
Rickard wants to take it.
Yeah. No, but I would say there is not that and there's not many changes happening. There is always the discussion of, okay, third backup, fourth backup, like not the first backup or the disaster recovery. That should be like in state or in a specific city. But as we always say, try to have as many backups as possible and test it. It's not about having a backup; it's testing the backup to see that it actually works.
But the main point, Eric, is that you need to have a backup in the state and recovery backups locally stored in the state.
In most cases.
Yes.
And I think within the next couple of years, with more and more issues let's say something goes down. Let's say there's a large outage in a data center where there's a lot of sportsbooks. Then the regulator will have questions from the government from that state. What happened here with our revenue? Why did we lose 2 days of gaming taxes, literally? And then there will be starting to be debates about more disaster recovery, more redundancy. And that's what we're already starting to see in a few states. And that will accelerate within the next, maybe not tomorrow, within the next 5 years.
Absolutely. I would just like to add that, the regulations are really hard to change. And that regulations are the guidelines. And the reason why there can be some shifts is the practical applicability. Like, again, when the state just goes online, there are so many things that you need to do. Backups sometimes cannot be fully implemented to the extent that it's written in the regulation. Like we have run into the issue in one of the smaller states where there was only one certified data center. So if you want to have your disaster recovery in a second data center, that second data center does not have maybe necessarily certifications, or they are going to get it at some point, So I would say that as the states are longer on the market, all of those things that are not necessarily maybe fully implemented just yet, they are going to be fully implemented. And right, like Rickard said, that we have natural disasters, we have global warming, and that contributes to a lot of risks to the state's revenue. So I do think that it will definitely be fully technically implemented in the coming years.
Thank you. And the next question would be, the regulations are becoming so tough that it becomes really challenging for companies based outside of the US to look for business. Can we make it more flexible? I guess that would be more of a question to the US regulators, but maybe we could discuss, our experts have some information whether there are plans to make it more flexible, and maybe there are some tips how to ease the process.
No,
I can take that one. Like, looking at the market, the people that's already in the market that may take all the cost to go into the market with this, in this example, not so flexible model, they will never want to change it because they've already taken all the cost for it. So there's like literally no lobbying or no traction in make it more flexible. So it will stay like this. It won't.
Exactly.
That's just the answer. It won't change.
No, I mean, you're right.
About it. It will be like this.
If a regulation will become something, it will be more unflexible rather than more flexible. So this is up for the companies to adopt. When it comes to regulation, you adopt and you do it, or you don't enter the market. So if you think it's so tough, don't enter the US market.
I agree, because the regulations are tough, but you know what also is tough? The market. But what we're seeing, even with the tough regulations, there's an upward trend in almost all of the states, month over month, year over year. So regulations are tough, but companies are doing it. So why change something that is already working? Because again, the regulators are not the regulators are not thinking how to make your life harder. They're thinking about protections and the systems to implement in order to have an efficient system that is running, and that it has all of the controls, all of the responsible gaming. So it just, because it's a complex system, that's why the regulation is so sophisticated. But again, you just have to adopt it. That's all.
Perfect, thank you. I believe we answered already the states which are the easiest and most difficult to enter. So we can jump to the live questions. I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. I do my best to have it pronounced correctly. Question by Maciej Narojczyk. What are your thoughts on the regulatory side of social online casinos?
Should I start? I think as long as there's no money involved in a game, there will be very limited regulation. A social casino is not more different than basically someone playing Candy Crush from a player or money perspective. There are games that are actually so. If they're going to regulate social casinos, they have to regulate every game where you have an in-app purchase, and I don't think that will happen. So a social casino, you could start social casinos without a hassle of regulations, and then if you want to turn that social casino into a real money casino, you have to do the regulations. And there are a lot of companies using this as a market entry strategy, and it's a good market entry strategy if you know how to run a social casino. There's a larger difference than people might think between running a social casino and running a real money casino, and vice versa. If you have a really good real money casino, it doesn't really make you having that is not a guarantee for you succeeding in the social casino area. So but we see more and more of this. But regulation, I don't think so. Elena, do you have a different opinion?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Is that, if you start regulating the social casinos, you have to start regulating everything. And there are so many, like you can think of so many games. We do, as humans, we do like to play. So we have a lot of games, and regulating all of it is just it's just unrealistic.
Regulating monopoly.
Monopoly.
Exactly, especially when we play about money.
It is.
Thank you. So let's get on to the next question. What are your expectations based on observations of Ohio and Maryland launches? Which state or states will have a potential to reach top 10 till the end of 2023?
I'm happy to start. So the chart that we have seen on one of the slides that we shared was taken for January. The handle, as with everything, some states have lulls for one reason or another. So we are going to see it shift from months to months. We just have to wait. But as you have seen, I think it was number 9. The state that had it was Louisiana, I think, on the chart, that has like twice the revenue of the number 8 and number 7. So like even those states might shift a little bit, so far what we see even on January is very likely to be the same throughout the year with minor changes.
Thank you. And I can see a very technical question that will probably go to Rickard by Anton Vinogradov. What is the best architecture type for the platform, monolithic or microservice? Also, please share some meanings about language framework. Q is connection to technical scalability.
Yeah. No, but I can tell you, it depends a little bit. If you are, let's say, a large land-based content provider, slot provider, it doesn't matter, because you have a huge customer base. You have a lot of players that want to play the games. You have a lot of operators that want to have these games. Then it really doesn't matter, because the commercial value is so big. Looking at smaller RGSs, trying a few states or some other like sportsbook providers, then I would probably go with having the like micro setup, not the big monolith, but microservices. Again, like I said before, data warehousing, BI, like all these things, do you actually need to have that in state, or can you offload it in one like non-licensed facility, basically somewhere in the US? Or somewhere else in the world, but that's what I will be looking at if I like to help that kind of decision.
Thank you, Rickard. I will go with the last two questions because we're running nearly for 1 hour, and then it will be a wrap for today. So Desmond Miles asked, what is the best approach to upscaling your initial setup in the US?
I would say, like, on a on a technical side, like, again, start small, try to have it microservice, and then like build it from there. You don't need, like, try to have like a slow technical footprint as possible, and just build it, and have that kind of work with a provider that can give you that kind of flexibility. Either if you have dedicated servers, or if you have going with like us with the VMware cloud setup that we have in every state. That's how I would do it.
Yes, and again, if this is a business question, I would grow with my customers. So if I started in one state, let's say I do New Jersey first, then I would go with the customers I have and see what other states they are in, and then I would enter these states with the license and then the technology setup or a hosting setup, state by state where my customers are. That's the fastest way to scale any business. Scale with your current customers, and most of the operators today that would be your customer are in multiple states.
Thank you very much. And I could see two people trying to type the question. Guys, if somebody has any questions left and we won't manage to answer them today, please feel free to send it to us via email or inbox it to us via LinkedIn. We will have our experts reply them to you directly, so you'll have your answers. No worries at all. Thank you for your question, Desmond. And the final question for today's live is from Finn de Jong. Some online sports betting states are planning to legalize other forms of online gambling this or next year. How will you tackle additional pressure on your services?
I can take that. Like, we have an amazing team at Internet Vikings to be able to scale up. We have set up 22 data centers within the last 24 months, or less than that, in 18 states, and now we're probably like 2 more states within the next couple of months, and that's the kind of pace we have done it with like some of the largest both B2C operators and B2B players in the market. It's a lot of work, but we have a great team to do it. We also have purchased a lot of hardware to be able to like scale it quick, to not sit and wait for an external, like, we don't want an external, like someone external to influence our timelines.
And the key word here is planning ahead. That's what Rickard and Elena and the team is doing all the time. Planning ahead, which states are coming, what is happening. Elena has this. That's why we have these seminars for people to understand where the industry and business is heading. And of course, Rickard now already today had a pretty fair picture of which states we need to be in, which means that these are the regulators he's speaking to, these are the regulators he's meeting, these are the data centers he's looking at, etc., etc. So when a state opens up, whether it's for a new sport, or for a new gambling format, or just opening up with new licenses, we are, or Rickard and his team are prepared, and that's the way to do it. Plan ahead.
Thank you. There was one final question I will ask our experts. Are we okay to take the really one last question, or do you need to wrap up?
No, that's okay.
It's okay. So that's one from Serdan Srepler. How do we see sporting rights influencing competition in terms of what can be traded and offered in the US markets?
That's an interesting question. Elena, would you start?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. There's definitely, before the regulation is finalized, there is definitely discussion groups on both sides. The regulators are listening what the people in that state want, and that's why you see that every state differs from the other state. They are talking to the regulators are talking to each other and they're listening, but there is slight deviation in terms of regulations. For instance, some states allow college sports, some states feel like it's not the right step for them. So it's really, you have to look at a trends on a state level, where people are really leaning, but there's definitely an input from the interested stakeholders that is going into the writing of the regulation.
And also, I mean, that will be a huge question going down the line, whether they will be allowed to bet on college or not. Because if you look in the European, I would say all legislations in the European markets, there's a ban to bet under 18. You can't bet on leagues with players being under the age of 18, and that discussion will happen. Then when it comes to the rights, if you look at Europe again, the fixture, no one owns the fixture. If Leeds playing Aston Villa on Saturday, I can present that on my site and I can present the odds. That's might be a bit different in the US, where NFL, as an example, might have a say that you can't use my fixture because I own them. You can't bet on my games, and with that they will take a levy or something like that, and that will of course influence the growth of the business, because that would mean another tax in quotation mark to pay for, and that we always know it's always the players that pay the tax eventually, and when the tax goes too high, players will go dark or gray or black. So that's an interesting question, and that's something I think we should follow over time. And that might perhaps be a topic for the next time, Elena, for you to look in a bit more into which sports could be in jeopardy of this.
And sorry, Sudan has left a specification more from the perspective of monopolies by content feeds. Virginia, Sport Radar, IMG.
Yeah, my feeling, I might be wrong here. My feeling is that they want to sell to as many customers as possible. They are like all of us. When you start doing one customer, there will always be someone else supporting your product to the rest of the world. So I would be very, very surprised if a company like Genius or Sport Radar would limit certain part of the market, because they just open up for competitors. It could happen, but I would be surprised. I would think that would be a bad choice from their side. So I wouldn't be that worried.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you, Jelena. Thank you, Rickard. I believe that's all. Coincidentally, the last question as well. That would be a wrap for today. Thank you for your time and for your expertise. And thank you to the audience for being so active, for asking questions, and of course, being with us today. As I promised, I will leave the link to the brochure in the chat box, and we will also follow up with the email sending you the brochure directly. And of course, if you have any unanswered questions, do feel free to send them to us on LinkedIn or via the email address. And it's a question whether they can get the presentation. Yes, definitely, we can send the presentation alongside with the brochure. And for those who are late or couldn't watch the webinar today, it will be uploaded to our website and to our YouTube channel, so you can come back at any time and gather all the insights that you need. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.